Hi there, this is Seid, coach and mentor to Changemakers and founder of Cascadia Workshops. This video is on community economic development. This particular topic is really exciting to me and really important because I see the destruction that's happening in the world through the way our economic system is so messed up, and I have a whole other video on what's wrong with economics. I'm not going to go into all of that here, but this is one of the solutions that communities, towns, and cities can undertake for you to take back the reins of your economic future and the economic future of your local community. If you talk to practically any politician or you listen to their speeches, you'll see how so much of their focus is on economics and jobs. They want to grow the economy, and so much of it is about jobs, 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 jobs. So what happens? What do towns and cities do? They compete against each other to get corporations to come and set up shop. Washington State, where I live, is so afraid and has been so afraid to lose Boeing. And understandably so. Boeing brings a lot of money into our state's economy. It sells big airplanes, and all the people who work there get paid pretty well, and then they go out and they spend the money locally so that restaurants and clothing stores and other places locally are also benefiting from this big economic engine. But what you see is that towns, when they're competing against each other to bring some large corporate entity or manufacturing or a new data center, whatever it is, what you notice is that these local governments, in their competition, they want to give away, for example, no land taxes, or they'll say no water bill for 10 years, or they'll create incentives to bring that industry to their town. And what happens? Industry shows up, sets up a local factory, they trash the local environment, and then they pick up a few years later and they move to Mexico. Same thing happens there. The process repeats itself. They set up shop, they're given all sorts of incentives like expedited environmental regulations and permits and whatever towns can do to bend over backwards and spread their butt cheeks so that industry can come and set up shop and do what? Create a bunch of low-wage jobs, trash the local environment, and then do it again. They pack up out of Mexico and they go to the Philippines. And then they do it again, they go to China, and like that. It's called the race to the bottom. Where can we find the cheapest labor? Where can we find the least environmental regulations so that, yes, we're producing a t-shirt like this that I can go out and buy for $5 or $1, but is that the world we want, in which we're competing in the race to the bottom to see who can we exploit more easily, how can we trash the environment more easily, and how can we buy more stuff? And in the video on what's wrong with the economy, I go a lot more deeply into these stories that underpin our economy about who we are as human beings and what constitutes the good life, because that's a big part of what's driving all this. The problem with the race to the bottom is if you win, it's still the bottom. This is one of the issues with economic globalization that's deregulated, where we have the free flow of capital and labor and materials, is that it might pencil out nicely, theoretically speaking, but in reality, it's destroying the planet and our local communities. The race to the bottom is a race to the bottom economically, socially, and environmentally. So that's not a race that we even want to be in, let alone try to win. Over 20 years ago, I designed my own major in college in sustainability work. So looking at the long-term health and vitality of the economic, environmental, and social system, seeing it all as one integrated whole, and looking at how can it thrive into the long term. In my research, I came across Rocky Mountain Institute, and they had a program called the Economic Renewal Program. These are the kinds of people that I wish I would have seen on Oprah. that I wish I would have seen this spread all over, and I haven't. I'm sure there's a lot happening, but this is basically their methodology of their economic renewal program, which has changed names, but I want to lay it out for you because it makes a lot of sense as a map for community economic development. There are essentially 4 steps. The first step for community economic development is a visioning process where your community comes together and decides what is our vision for our community into the future. It's really important that you have good facilitation so that you can take the different voices that may seem to have very different points of view and you start to integrate and find the best in each of those points of view so that instead of an either-or solution, you can have both and solutions. Instead of win-lose solutions where this group of people wins and this group of people loses, you can create win-win solutions. So this community visioning process is the first step for community economic development. Once we're clear on the vision that we're wanting for our local community, it's going to be so much easier to chart a path together for getting there. The second step a community undertakes is they plug the leaks. You look at what are the areas in which your community is spending money once that then leaves the community right away. So you look at the places where money is leaving the community unnecessarily and you start to plug those leaks in order to keep more of those resources inside your community bucket, so to speak. So that's the second step, is starting to plug the leaks. The third step is you find existing local businesses. Businesses that are local and independently owned. They're not a subsidiary of another transnational that's owned by another transnational. Local independent businesses. And you start to support them more. And you start to create a culture of supporting local businesses, and there are other ways to do that, which I'll share toward the end of this video. But that's the third step, is find existing local businesses and support them. When you spend money locally, and if they spend money locally, and if they spend money locally, that money circulates in your community many times, creating wealth 20 or 100 times before it leaves the community. So let's look at those strategies rather than strategies where we spend money once and it leaves. The fourth step for community economic development is supporting the creation of new local businesses. So whereas the third step was supporting existing local businesses, in the fourth step, we're going to support the creation of new local businesses where there are niches that aren't currently filled by local independent businesses. There are many things that communities can do to support the creation of new local independent businesses. For example, in my area, there's a small business development center that's associated with a local university. Once you've gone through this process with your neighbors and in your community, you'll be able to find those resources and utilize them in a very advantageous way if you're doing this as a community process. So those are the 4 steps for community economic development. You do a visioning process as a community so that you're calibrating your compass for the direction that you want to go in your community. You're plugging the leaks of money that gets spent once and leaves the community. You're supporting existing local businesses so that you can keep the money circulating locally. And then you start filling in the niches where they aren't filled by supporting the creation of new local and independent businesses to really increase the strength and the resiliency of your local economy. I want to clarify one thing. This is not about isolationism. This is not about anything from the outside is bad. You can make a national security argument for having strong local communities all over the country or all over the world. This is about local people, local areas taking back the reins of being self-empowered around our shared economic future. Trade will continue to happen, both of goods and services and information. We're not going to stop that, and that existed before cars even existed. Trade was happening. We will always be connecting with each other, and I love that we live on this beautiful planet, and one of the things that we can do to care for it is to make our local communities stronger and more resilient in the face of anything that could come our way. One resource I'd like to mention is BALI, which is the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. you can go to balle.org to find out more about their very important work. So I'd like to issue you a challenge or an invitation with this video, and that is, look at where you're spending your money and what places you're spending, say at a large chain or a transnational corporation, where you might find a local business that's doing something similar, and see if you can switch and start supporting a local business in your area today. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.